Dealmaker Insights, a podcast brought to you by Reed Smith's corporate and finance lawyers from around the globe. In this podcast series, we explore the various legal and financial issues impacting your deals. Should you have any questions on any of the content through this series, please contact our speakers.
Hello, welcome back to the Dealmaker Insights podcast channel. Today, you have me, Ada Lamos, and Marie Bory. We are part of the corporate team in the Dubai office of Reed Smith. And today, we will talk about setting up a business in the UAE. So the purpose of this podcast is to basically take you to the practical or some of the practical terms and issues to be considered when setting up a business or considering setting up a business in the UAE, to keep the discussion informative and interesting. We have structured this podcast as a case study, hypothetical case study discussion, where I'm going to play the role of the UK CEO who's running this mid-size UK IT software company. It's been doing some work for UAE clients and GCC clients recently, and now is looking to expand its business further in the Middle East, and has come to Marie to get a bit of info about how you set up a business in the UAE and particularly in Dubai. So my company is, let's call it IT Intel, would like to understand a bit more about the setup process, what we should take under consideration and pay attention to. Also, do we have any options, and what's the best option for what we intend to achieve? So, Marie, can you tell us a little bit about things that we should consider when structuring our future presence in the UAE?
Certainly, Adela. I will be delighted to guide your fictional company through the ups and downs of setting up a business in UAE. So basically, any business in the UAE, in any Emirates, is required to obtain a license, conduct business as per the terms of its license, and have a registered office at all time in the UAE onshore or in the UAE free zone. So the legal form, the place of registration, in or outside UAE free zone, and the type of license for your company will vary greatly depending on its business model. So for me to properly advise you on the corporate structure, I will need some clarification regarding several items, which are, first of all, the business activity the entity will be conducting in the UAE, the number of employees who will be based in UAE and sponsored by the new entity, the type of real estate premise required by the entity for its registered office, the type of clients the entity will be targeting, onshore client, free zone client, foreign clients, or governmental bodies. Whether or not the license to be applied for is regulated, that's something I will be able to determine once you have explained a bit further what type of a business activity the entity will be conducting. Have you seek tax advice in the UK regarding this setup? Is it a joint venture or an association with a local partner? And finally, can you please let me know who will be managing the entity?
Thank you, Marie. Well, let's say that IT Intel is a software company operating exclusively online. We do not trade hardware at the moment, although we may do in the future, but not for now. The company is already servicing clients located in the UAE on a case-by-case basis. We sometimes even have clients in the wider GCC. And we have noticed that the number of requests for our services coming out of the Middle East has increased significantly in the recent months. Therefore, we have sat down as a board and have decided that there is a good business potential in the Middle East for our business. And therefore, in order to realize that potential, we should set up a permanent presence. We would prefer to set it up in Dubai, and it should be suitable for us servicing our clients in the UAE but also it should serve as a hub for the expansion of our business throughout the wider GCC in the future. In terms of clients, well, we'd consider tendering, bidding for public tenders for government work if available, but we're probably going to continue servicing our individual and commercial clients. Tax, you've mentioned tax. We have not received tax advice at the moment in relation to this expansion of our business, but we will do in the future. And I do understand that that is a very essential part of our the process. You also asked about manager. We do not know who the manager of the entity is, but we're thinking of recruiting some people locally, potentially a manager, but we'd also like to keep a certain level of control over the management of the company at parent company level. We are not looking to associate ourselves with a joint venture partner at the moment, but we might do at some point. For now, we're just setting up the business ourselves. In terms of where we're going to set up, you mentioned free zones and onshore options earlier. I've heard about free zones, but I don't really know much about them. Can you please explain what the difference is between free zones and onshore and what our options are?
Well, free zone is an interesting concept, and over the years, the past 25 years, the UAE has created many special economic zones designated to attract foreign investors. They are typically established around ports and airports to facilitate trade and offer many incentives such as zero-rated custom duties. Some free zones have been set up as business hubs to promote and support certain sectors, such as healthcare, media, IT, and we do have two independent financial free zones, the AGGM and the DIFC, who have their own common law system and courts to support financial service company. Historically, foreign ownership restrictions apply onshore UAE. And although they have been relaxed recently, allowing more direct foreign investment in the UAE, free zones are still a very attractive place to register a business. And I will be happy to discuss the pros and cons of setting up a company in the free zone. So the main advantage, as I said, is a full foreign ownership that is permitted, and it will guarantee full control over the management of the company. Onshore, depending on the activity, although certain activity have been relaxed and attract 100% foreign ownership, most of the trading activity conducted onshore will require the setup of limited liability company with a majority local shareholder, either a company 100% owned by a UAE national or a UAE national. Many free zones offer a tax-free holiday up to 50 years and are exempt from custom duties. The tax holiday has been promised on the basis that whatever change in the tax regime onshore, it will not apply to free zone during the tax holidays. Another point to mention is in the free zone, the legal form of the business is still limited. It's either a limited liability company, either with one shareholder or more than one shareholder, a branch of a foreign company or a local company, and some free zones allow the incorporation of a public joint stock company, but this is quite rare. There are a lot more options in terms of legal structure onshore. The main disadvantage of a free zone setup is that the range of business activity permitted to be licensed in the free zone is limited. Certain activities are regulated in the sense that they have to be licensed onshore and attract special approval from a certain local authority. The main activity that is restricted in the free zone is all trading activities. They have to be set up onshore through a limited liability structure, and they will require a local sponsor owning 51% of the shares in that limited liability structure. The other disadvantage will be the availability, the location, and the cost of real estate. Any company in the UAE is required to have a registered office, and the office has to be located where the company is registered. So if you are, as a company, registered in the specific free zone, your office will have to be located in that free zone. And certain free zone, the landlord is the government of Dubai, and private market rate do not apply. So the cost of the rent is a lot higher. That needs to be taken into consideration when you are looking into setting up in the UAE. As a IT company like IT Intel, it's an interesting activities because IT is considered as a service, and as such, IT Intel will be able to set up in the free zone and onshore as it's conduct what we call a professional activity. However, if the company wishes to enter into governmental contract, an onshore license will typically be required. This is something that can be resolved easily, as in the UAE, free zone entities are now allowed to apply for what we call a dual license, which is a branch office outside of the free zone holding an onshore license without the requirement of having a separate office outside of the free zone. The best option will remain the free zone for tax reason from a UAE perspective.
Thank you for that. Are there any particular free zones that would be more suitable for our type of activity?
Yes, as an IT company, there is one free zone that would be particularly of interest for IT Intel, which will be the Dubai Internet City. So this is an example of highly specialized free zone. The Dubai Internet City is part of the Dubai Development Authority, which has sub-free zones such as Dubai Media City, Dubai Internet City, Knowledge Village, and the free zone is designed to attract IT software and technology company. They provide a business hub and specific advantages that are specific to the industry in terms of infrastructure, services, etc.
That sounds great. What about tax? You mentioned a tax holiday. I thought there was no tax in Dubai. Has anything changed?
There is currently no tax in Dubai except from the VAT and custom duties. However, a new corporate tax regime will be introduced in UAE starting in 2023. The tax rate will be 0% for taxable income up to 375,000 dirhams, 9% for taxable income over 375,000, and a different tax rate that still need to be just confirmed, probably 15%, will apply for large multinational company that meet specific criteria. So it still needs to be clarified. The law has not been officially published, gazetted, but businesses established in free zone should be subject or will be subject to corporate tax in UAE. However, the corporate tax incentive currently offered to businesses established in free zone that comply with all regulatory requirements and do not conduct commercial activity onshore UAE will still apply. So it means that free zone company will benefit from a tax holiday of up to 50 years, depending on the free zone. Still, it isn't clear if the revenue derived from onshore based clients will be taxable or not. So this is still a big question mark, and it will have to be clarified during the year.
Very interesting development. I think you mentioned VAT earlier. VAT applies in free zone?
In most free zone, VAT applies. There are certain designated area where the VAT does not apply, but to be objective, most of the free zone based company are subject to VAT.
Thank you. Just to move on to license, you said that in order to carry on business in the UAE, we need to obtain a business license. Can we obtain a business license for everything? Are there restrictions as to business licenses? Are there different types of licenses? Can we start with one type of license and then perhaps expand our activities later?
Well, in the UAE, there are three types of license. The first type is commercial license. Typically, it covers all trading activities, specifically trading of physical goods. The second license is what we call a professional license. Typically, it covers service type of activity, and then industrial license. It's very important for a company to really understand that there are restrictions of where a company can obtain a license. For IT Intel being a software company, Dubai Internet City will be most probably the best option in terms of location. That being said, if in the future IT Intel wishes to expand its activity, change its activity, then Dubai Internet City might not be the right location. So what will happen is either the company will be able to change its license, amend its license, and still be compliant with the mandate of the free zone and the local rules and regulation, or will simply have to set up a separate entity. Typically, what we see is that it's one company, one license. It's the number of business activity that can be listed on the license, of the number of license a company can apply for is limited. So there might be a requirement to set up a separate legal entity depending on the type of activity IT Intel will like to conduct in the future.
That's interesting. Someone mentioned something about dual licenses. Can we get a license to operate onshore from a free zone?
This is correct, but again, certain requirements apply. A dual license has been created to allow free zone company to set up shop onshore for certain activity that can be licensed under a branch office setup. So because the requirement in the UAE is to one license, one registered office, it comes at a cost. So to incentivize businesses to expand onshore, free zone company now have the option of setting up a branch onshore and apply for a dual license through that branch office. But the type of license they can apply for is limited to professional license, service license. So for instance, a company registered in the free zone that is licensed for trading will not be able to obtain a dual license onshore because trading related activities are still regulated in the sense that a local sponsor is required.
Okay, understood. Now, you mentioned one license, one company, one license. I think you also mentioned something about offices. We're an IT company, especially in this COVID era. Most of our staff works remotely. Do we need an office at all? And if we do, does it have to be in a certain size, or can we get away with one desk somewhere?
Absolutely. So it depends on the real estate offering from one free zone to another and onshore. So you will see that onshore there is a wide range of office offering. It's possible to have an office or a virtual desk in a business center. The costs are a lot less onshore compared to free zone where a business center office or a virtual office is not always a possibility. And generally speaking, they are still more expensive. But what needs to be taken into consideration is the number of employees the company will be sponsoring. So the majority of employees in the UAE are expat and they are required to obtain a UAE residence visa and a work permit under the sponsorship of their employer. So as I said, IT Intel will be required to have a registered office located within the free zone, let's say DIC, for instance, where it will be registered. This is always a prerequisite to the licensing procedure. The company will be required to enter into a 1-year lease agreement prior incorporation and every year after that, as this is a requirement to maintain its license in a good standing. So the license is issued for 1 year and the lease agreement, the term is also for 1 year. And the number of employees the company will be able to sponsor depends on the size of its leased premises. So there is a quota of visa that will be allocated to the free zone based on the type of lease agreement in place. And the ratio is 1 visa per 9 square meter. This is the the correlation between visa and office space.
Very interesting. And that takes me on to cost. Obviously, we're going to have to budget for this expansion. So can you let me know a little bit about what costs we can expect from share capital to any other costs? You mentioned offices, perhaps licensing.
Well, to start with, the share capital of a limited liability company, not a branch, will have to be fully paid out. So once the company is incorporated and the bank account is opened in the name of the company, the shareholder will have to pay the amount equivalent to the share capital in the article and or memorandum of association of the company. And these again vary from one place of registration to another. So in some free zone and onshore, there is typically no share capital minimum. The only requirement is that the share capital has to be sufficient to allow the company to conduct and perform its objective. Otherwise, from a free zone to another, the minimum share capital range from about 50,000 dirhams to 300,000 dirhams.
Okay, what about other costs?
So you will have a cost at the time of incorporation for the purpose of incorporating the company, and then every year there will be a recurring cost. So at the time of incorporation, the company will be required to settle the free zone or the local authority fees for the incorporation and licensing. So there will be license fees. And again, it varies depending on the place of registration. In free zone, typically the cost is between 3,000 to 6,000 USD per year for the license. There is also a registration fee around, and I'm just giving you estimate, and because obviously, as I said, the costs vary from one free zone to another, and onshore, for instance, registration do not apply. Roughly about $3,000. The company, IT Intel, will have to account for the annual rent for its office. So if it's a simple flexi desk in the business center, it starts from about probably, and again, depending on the free zone, roughly 3,000 to 6,000 USD. And you will have to also account for the visa fee, about 3,000 USD per visa. And there are miscellaneous fees that needs to be taken into consideration, and they can be estimated around $4,000.
Okay, just to wrap up in terms of timing, how long should I expect for this setup to take? In the UK, I can set up my company in one day. What about the UAE?
In the UAE, at the moment, it will take, depends again on the free zone. Rare free zone do not ask for notarized and attested documents, but most of free zone do. And for that reason, the incorporation process will take roughly 8 weeks, and that is the minimum. What will delay the incorporation or setup of the entity will be the time required to obtain all the corporate document of the incorporator notarized and attested in the country of registration. With COVID, we see that the notarization and attestation delay have increased. For instance, in the UK, it takes about 4 weeks to get documents notarized and attested. In the US, it takes about 12 weeks at the moment. So that will have impact on the time frame. The other delay would be the time required for the company to identify a suitable office. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time. There is no availability in the free zone that you would like to set up the company in. So all these elements have to be taken into consideration.
That's great, Marie. Thank you very much. I think that was a lot of information, but Marie and I are available for providing any further information. If anyone requires, please do contact us. There are a lot of things we haven't got the time to discuss in this podcast format. So let's hope we'll get a chance to continue the discussion in a different setting. Thank you very much for listening and have a lovely day. Thank you.
Dealmaker Insights is a Reed Smith production. Our producer is Ali McArdle. For more information about Reed Smith's corporate and financial industry practices, please email dealmakerinsights@reedsmith.com. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, reedsmith.com, and on our social media accounts at Reedsmith LLP on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
This podcast is provided for educational purposes. It does not constitute legal advice and is not intended to establish an attorney-client relationship, nor is it intended to suggest or establish standards of care applicable to particular lawyers in any given situation. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Any views, opinions, or comments made by any external guest speaker are not to be attributed to Reed Smith LLP or its individual lawyers. All rights reserved.